Hello, Tina.
Hi, Renee. It's a safe place here today.
Yes,
It
welcome to
is.
Safe Place.
Please subscribe, comment, like, do whatever you need to do, share.
We're a little bit dark, but we chose to stay here because the sunset in the background is
Divine.
gorgeous.
It's beautiful. We've got the moon that's growing to full in front of us and we've got that behind us. It's just perfect. So even though you can't see us, we figure that's probably a bonus for you anyway. Renee wants to bring up something. She's received comments and messages from people who are going through something that is very traumatic, and she would like to read some stuff out to you about that and talk to you about that, and then I will interject with my wisdom.
Yeah, well, what I'm writing is my response too, but basically what's happening is because of what I post. So basically I keep updating my page with all the latest shenanigans from the Jehovah's Witness community. They're not apologizing to the victims. There's a whole heap of victims and they're just ignoring the fact that they're there and just totally silencing the victims and mocking them and saying it's all apostate lies. So what's happening is I'm writing those stories up of, you know, the latest discoveries. And people write in and they say, I was abused, this happened to me, an elder did this to me, a minister or servant did this to me, my dad did this to me, and they all tell me that they reported it and they were silenced. And now personally, and I think this shows my ignorance, straight away my first reaction is go to the police and tell the police, like, report it. Have you reported it? And you know, because I want to help them. I feel as if that's part of their healing. If they go and report it, get the person in trouble. If that,
I think the fear that comes for sexual abuse survivors is that so often when it is reported to police or to whomever, nothing happens, and the perpetrator of that violence pretty much gets away with it. We saw that with George Pell, like Cardinal George Pell here in Australia. Well, he has, because the victims of sexual abuse live with that for the rest of their life. He's away for however long because he's led a blameless life.
Yeah, but he's going to get locked up now.
For a short period of time that does not bring anything back to the victim. So I don't know that there's a period of time that would be satisfactory. But
actually, a witness just wrote to me, an ex-witness, her perpetrator, she did have the courage. He got 18 days.
There we go.
In jail.
And so our society's justice systems need to catch up with that. But
that made me so angry because
it's wrong.
For everything, what a kick in the gut.
Absolutely. But I think it is a kick in the gut. I also suffered sexual abuse from 3 different perpetrators as I was growing up, and I think the thing that's robbed from you is that feeling of control. And so you become a victim of sorts to other things as a result of feeling like you didn't have power then and there. I think reporting it, if you feel strong enough to be able to relive it and do that, is perfectly fine. But I think there are other things people can do in their lives to get that control back.
Yeah, because I mean, that's the thing I sort of say. I tread very carefully because obviously I'm not an expert in this, but I listen. I listen to them first and foremost.
And that's the most important thing, because you validate their existence when you do that.
One of the ladies was the first time she'd told anybody in 20 years.
So that's massive. That's massive.
So I'll still go back to my silly reaction. My reaction, okay,
it's not silly, it's your reaction.
Well, let's
your
report
reaction's
it,
all
and
right.
their reaction is, oh, no. So I thought, what is it that's preventing them from reporting? What is it that's stopping them from reporting? And I did a bit of research, and that's when I wrote some stuff down. So if I read it to you, will you?
Did your research show that shame is the biggest reason that they won't do it, because there's that fear of not being believed and of their story not being worthwhile enough to share or to be told or them to be vindicated for? Is that what your research showed?
Can I read it?
Sure. She goes off about me not answering questions.
I'm about to answer it. So I did some research. This is what I found out, and it's going to strike. I'm reading word for word, okay? Because I was going to write it as a story on my page, but I never did. Yeah. Because I didn't write it because I felt like I wasn't worthy enough to write it.
That's interesting.
I felt like this is not my domain. I don't have enough right. I feel that they deserve so much more. I know it's bizarre, but I just didn't feel like I would be adequate enough for them. Anyway, I'm going to read it to you.
No, and I think those feelings are valid because they're your feelings, but I also think that, knowing you the way I do, that if someone comes to you, we all occasionally say something that people don't want to hear, or can't hear, or that's off, and that's all right. They've trusted you and they've reached out to you, which is significant, so they feel safe with what you tell them, and I know you and know that you will do the research. So let's see what you've written.
I still don't feel worthy for them.
But that's
anyway.
your issue, not theirs.
So this is what I found out, and it will strike a chord with you if you have experienced any sort of trauma.
So there could be triggers in this as well. Renee probably hasn't sworn.
No. It struck a chord with me because of the trauma of being disfellowshipped. So I think what I'm about to talk about also applies to the trauma of being disfellowshipped. If you have suffered some other unfair and cruel treatment, I think you will also understand. One of the primary reasons people don't come forward to report sexual abuse is shame. They blame themselves. They blame themselves and they want to hide. They try to make themselves invisible.
I don't know that it's blaming themselves. I think it's the shame that you let it happen. I don't think that's blaming. And
many
going.
who have been deeply shamed take on the underlying and persistent belief that they are defective or unacceptable.
Absolutely.
They feel isolated and unworthy to be around others.
Because often threats are made that you will not report this, you will not say this to anyone because no one will believe you anyway, which instantly tells that person that what they're feeling is not worth it. They're not worth it. They're not valid.
Their experience has been humiliating and they don't want to have to share it, not privately and certainly not publicly.
And sometimes sexual abuse victims, because our bodies can betray and react physically, actually enjoy that experience of being aroused even though they're not enjoying the abuse itself, and that needs to be a clear distinction. But that also then brings shame.
They feel shame because as human beings, we want to believe that we have control over what happens to us. When that personal power is challenged by a victimization of any kind, we feel humiliated. We believe we should have been able to defend ourselves. And because we weren't able to do so, we feel helpless and powerless.
Yep.
Powerlessness causes humiliation, which leads to shame.
Yep.
It is often easy to blame ourselves and to admit that you didn't have control, that you were in fact helpless. We want to believe that we are in control of our own lives. We want to believe that we're in control.
Yeah, I'm not so sure about that one. Let's keep going.
When something that occurs reminds us that in fact we are not in control, it is very upsetting. So upsetting that we would prefer to blame ourselves.
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure
keep
how.
going.
Yeah.
Some may choose to try to forget the entire incident, to put their head in the sand and try and pretend it never happened. They blame themselves. You hate that blaming themselves thing. You don't like that, do you? And overwhelmed with shame.
No, because I don't think that they necessarily... I think some might blame themselves, but I think it's equally true that some don't.
Overwhelmed with shame, they begin to minimize the abuse.
Yes.
They may begin even to deny it happened.
Yes.
Or to try and forget it.
And they repress whole pockets of memory as a result of the trauma of it.
Some victims have such low self-esteem that they don't consider what happened to them to be very serious.
Absolutely. Oh, hang on a minute.
No.
Oh.
They may refuse... No, shut up. They may refuse to believe that the treatment they endured was actually abusive. And they may start to minimize or downplay the abuse.
Yeah. Or say it didn't exist at all.
They may begin...
Even if they write about it. But keep going.
They may begin to feel so worthless that they may distort the reality of what actually happened. They play a distorted narrative in their heads that it was their fault.
Or that it didn't happen.
Often, I'm nearly finished by the way, in case you're bored. I'm sorry. Often, victims convince...
That's a worth thing, apologising. You didn't need to do that.
Often, victims convince themselves that they were the only victim. What if they knew that others had also been hurt? Would that help them validate what they had been through? Because you don't. A lot of victims that write on the page, then later realise that that guy went on to blah, 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 and blah. And I think that's hard.
I think that then brings in guilt. because then you question, well, if I had done something or said something, would those other people? And so you carry, it's like a martyrdom, and you carry the responsibility of everyone's
But
abuse.
they shouldn't. Can we explain?
Absolutely not. Victims are victims. They're blameless. They didn't ask for something to happen. Their behaviour didn't make something happen. When a child is preyed upon by an adult, that is solely the responsibility of the adult. That is not the child's responsibility, and it never can be. I was working with a lady earlier today, and we were talking through this exact same issue. She's carrying a lot of guilt for what happened, and then the way it impacted her and the behaviour she had with other people. And we worked through those feelings, and we talked about them, and she came to a place of peace, that it was not her responsibility. She did not choose for that to happen. Consciously choose for that to happen in this lifetime. I've talked about my beliefs before, so what I just said is at odds with my belief. But in general terms, she didn't ask for that to happen. None of your victims have asked for that to happen. But stepping out and saying, I need to report it, takes a hell of a lot of courage, and you don't believe you're worth it, to be honest.
Speaking up brings enormous amounts of fear. Fear of repercussions, fear they won't be believed.
Yeah, absolutely.
They can't see a way out. They feel hopeless and helpless and powerless.
And they're not. They're not. As children, we're powerless. As adults, we are not. As adults, we can seek the help that we need. And if the first person doesn't work, you keep trying until someone works with you. As adults, we are not helpless. As adults, we control our choices and we control our responses. And I think it's really important for survivors of sexual abuse to hear that, because as adults, we can work through that pain and the trauma, and we can heal.
It is so understandable that victims have a difficult time coming forward. These people deserve our recognition about how difficult it is, and our compassion for what they have been through. They need to be helped. They need to be helped to push away their feelings of shame. No, hang on. I've written something wrong here.
It's the push away.
They need to push. Like, they have to push their feelings of shame. They have to project that shame back to the abuser.
No, they need to work through it. They don't need to project it back to anyone, because that's then making someone else responsible for that. So if they didn't get a response from the abuser, or if the abuser's passed or no longer part of their life, they can't do that. What they need to do is process those feelings, work through them, unpack them, and find substitute feelings after they've processed. They will come naturally, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
We need to stop
But we know I'm
asking
always right.
why victims won't report.
Yeah.
This is what I came up to at the end.
Yeah.
Like me, I need to stop asking why they won't report, and instead focus on how we can better support them so they can find a way to heal.
That's it.
We need to find a way so they don't have to be confronted with a second bout of trauma,
That's
the
exactly
triggers
right.
of having to face their past alone.
And that alone word is exactly it. Because people in our lives, the people closest to us, even with the best intentions, because they don't know how to support people, will often turn away when someone's in a dark place or when someone's feeling trapped. It's a coping mechanism. We say we don't know how to deal with this, so it's easier. What often happens is that victim, and it's happened to me a lot of times in my life, where I've been going through a dark place because of the trauma. And I had a couple of friends say to me once, I shouldn't laugh because it's not funny and it really hurt me at the time, also made me angry. They said that they couldn't be my friend anymore because I wasn't any fun to be around. I was never happy. And that killed me. But that's people who, and I understand where they were coming from, because I was miserable.
Age was that? Early 20s?
No. That was later in life.
Because I'm just wondering whether it's just a flippant thing, young, inexperienced people who've never had any
Yeah,
trauma
absolutely. And also people's expectations that when you're always the healer in a group, when you're the one that is happy and high-vibed and everyone works off your energy, it's very hard for people to see people in a different light, which is why it was important for me to come and video today, because people need to see that we're all works in progress. Like, we are all works in progress. We're all working through our crap together, or we're hoping that we're helping you work through your crap because we care. We don't want people to feel alone. Like, you don't want those ladies to feel alone. I think you've done a wonderful job with that response. I really do think you've done a wonderful... Sorry, Bindy's just coughing up something. I think you've done a wonderful job with that response for them.
So what we're trying to say is, what I wanted to, the message I wanted to bring out is, we can't judge people for not reporting.
No, people deal with their own trauma their own way.
And reporting's not necessarily a solution.
No, reporting can re-traumatise and can traumatise quite significantly and make someone feel...
But of course they should report.
I don't think so. It's because you're coming from the position. Well, no, because why are you responsible for someone else's path?
Like, if you know that there's another victim.
So why does that make the first victim responsible?
High five.
Yeah. Do we need to talk about this a little bit more?
No, that kind of touched me because they've got this massive burden already. And then if they do know, then all of a sudden we've placed another burden on them to say...
On a normally functioning person, that's fine. But when you're a survivor of any sort of trauma, I think the word normal goes out the window. What is normal anyway? But you've got a different set of patterns that you live through, and you've got a different context and view of the way you work in the world.
And that's Bindi.
And that's Bindi, who's decided to...
lean up against the table.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a safe place. We've talked about some pretty
intense things. If you need help, if you are one of these people that is stuck and don't know where to turn for help, in Australia, ring Lifeline. Should have their number handy, and I don't. But you can Google that, and they have telephone counselling 24/7, and it is worth ringing them as a first step.
In America, there's numbers as well. You just have to look up.
We've also got Doctors on Demand in America. It's an app that Dr. Phil and his wife Robin brought out.
But there's a 1-800 number or 0800 number or something in America. But all you have to do is Google
telephone counselling.
Yeah.
24/7.
Yeah.
But please don't sit and suffer alone, because you're not alone. You're not alone in any way, shape or form. You can also reach out to us. We have no problem with that. Our contact details are on our YouTube channel. You can access those and send us an email or a Facebook message or so. You're not alone. You're really not alone. Have a good night.